Hello and welcome. You're watching The Money Show. I'm Kavita Thapliyal, and today let's begin the show with a very exciting topic and a very basic topic. Investment tools for beginners. I have with me Feroze Azeez from Anand, Rathi Wealth, who will be guiding you today. Feroze, thank you so much for joining in. And we've spoken about this a lot of time on a lot of platforms, but looking at the new scenario. Now, what I mean by the new scenario is we have new investment avenues. We also have new type of investors. A very basic question I want to start this conversation with. With so much of newness around, Feroze, do basic principles of investments or financial planning change?
Kavita, to my mind, basics of investment principles don't change. Of course, they get boring, so people like to see change, but boring is best. As the investment arena evolves, I think investment principles don't change, at least in a few decades. Your age should decide your goals. That statement is going to be relevant 30 years from now, 50 years from now. So to answer your pointed questions, I think we like to see change as humans, but I don't see the necessity of a change because those principles which are evolved over decades stand the test of time.
All right, let's talk about so much of newness around. I really want you to highlight the kind of new investment avenues that we are looking at, be it crypto, be it REITs or InvITs, or be it anything where new type of investors are trying to dabble in and out, okay? Obviously, we know the new kind of investors. We are looking at millennials and their increased approach and interest in equity. We are looking at Gen Z who want to experiment everything, they have a different strategy for short term, they have a different strategy for long term. The caveat is they don't understand a lot of risk involved in these kind of investments also. So talking specifically about new kind of investment avenues, what is so new in them, what is the risk involved, and how can we look at it as new age investing?
Kavita, yes, there are several new age investments, but are they necessary? To my mind, no. Now, we are a wealth management outfit existing for close to about a couple of decades. And we manage about 12,000 HNI families, little over 12,000. And you would have seen as a listed company, we're also mandated to tell the public how much we manage. Close to 88,000 crores. The same 12,000 families have total 2 lakh crores. And I have not found the necessity to even add a rupee of REIT, InvIT, crypto. And my clients have had a audited result of risk-adjusted return greater than Warren Buffett. The point I'm trying to make is people think in a simple fashion, you can't achieve extraordinary outcomes. That's the problem. So I personally think people might invest in crypto. I was in an event, Kavita, in Dubai, asked the group how many people have invested in crypto. Almost 60% of the hands went up. In India, maybe 30% of the hands will go up. But none of them, ironically, knew why Terra Luna went bankrupt and became zero overnight. And it was ironically called a stable currency. मैंने पूछा किसको पता है कि टेरा लूना जीरो क्यों हो गया था? रातों रात, 2 रातों में zero हो गया. And it was called a stable currency. Why did that happen? Nobody had a clue. But 60% of them have actually bought crypto. So point I'm trying to make is the whole quotient of desire to have something new, right? Humans are attracted to new. You get bored with even your spouse after a decade. Right? So people like to see new, but it may not necessarily be a requirement.
All right. So definitely newness in your investments is not something that you should be going for, although how attractive it looks. But at the same time, it's not wrong to have that kind of newness or these kind of new investments in your portfolio if you're aware of the risk appetite you have and the risk involved in the investment avenue. So the question to you is, in what scenario should we be considering these kind of new age investments there?
Yes, see, Kavita, you're absolutely right. Me making a generic statement of none of them are good will be trying to take the hypothesis a little further. So absolutely, some new age investments will have relevance. When are they relevant? When you are looking at it as a satellite component. If you made innovation as the core component, then there's a problem. See, the core of an investment has to be the foundational stones of mutual fund and some diversified equities, debt, bonds, gold. All these are asset classes which have actually lived a few generations, right? So when you're using these new gen investment vehicles as the satellite which revolves and creates innovation on an already existing base of the conventional, I would say there is merit for sure. And there are some specific. The second use case of a new age investment is specific risk return objectives. Now, for example, REIT is looking at stability of dividend with some degree of capital appreciation and super liquidity, which real estate, on the other hand, doesn't provide in smaller tickets. So you're replacing unconventional asset, the age-old real estate, more unitized, more income generating, easy to liquidate. Now REITs come into picture and try and serve that need of a real estate tangible investment in a more financial investing world.
All right. Let's talk about the boring part because that forms a very essential part of your investment portfolio. In fact, an investment portfolio that's going to be there with you lifelong. So, to start off with, what is the first boring step that you should be taking, or first few boring steps?
Yes, Kavita, yes, you have to take some boring steps to make life interesting 20 years from now. So the first boring step is set your goal depending
Okay.
on your life stage. देखिए हर इंसान की एक स्थिति होती है and that is largely related to age. It's seldom does it happen that a 25-year-old has four dependents, right? At the age of 40, maybe there are three dependents. Your parents get older and they may need some attention. They may need some financial savings of yours consumed for their health needs and stuff. So setting of goals depending on which status and what age you are in and applying mind, spending that time is the first boring step, right? The second boring step is to work backward and say, कितना मुझे save करना पड़ेगा? How much will I need to save every month? Is it 10,000 will do the trick or 20,000 will do the trick? Am I late enough? So 40,000 I would need because I've been a little more flamboyant in the initial part of my life. So then the second boring step is to work backward and see जो लक्ष्य पे पहुंचना है, the place where I wish to reach. What's the kind of savings I'll have to do every single month to be able to live a fruitful life at the latter part of the stages. Understanding your risk appetite is the third most boring step because nobody wants to think about risk unless the risk come to your door and knocking on the like a wolf knocking on the door. So understanding your risk and in fact not just understanding your risk, changing your risk appetite, calibrating your risk appetite. I think understanding your risk is a little overrated. I was speaking to somebody, he says mutual funds are risky. I said, as long as you can have the courage to ignore risk of 5 years, don't be worried. The risk doesn't exist, right? So you calibrate your risk by increasing your time frame. You increase your time frame, risk drops. If I say my time frame becomes 10 years, the risk is gone. If you say 20 years, risk is out of the window forever. So calibrating the risk in your mind is also a step other than the risk appetite you're born with. Few boring steps, Kavita. Let me not
Sure.
take it into a monologue.
Sure. One last question to you, and then we'll wrap up this particular discussion. I wanted to know how can you assess or analyze your own risk appetite and your risk profile, because that's one of the basic steps that you should be starting your investment journey with. But then a lot of time, because see, we're also talking about first-time investors, and that depends on different age groups. You know, we might be talking about someone who's 20 years old, talking about someone who's 50 years old. Now, depending on their age, I'm sure the risk appetite differs. So, how can you analyze that, and how can you do your risk profile?
You can understand your risk profile by
Okay.
understanding the propensity to sleep well when you see a loss. What you should do is you should always visualize. See, you have to understand risk appetite more psychologically when you're trying to introspect. How do I check my risk appetite? I say if my portfolio is X, am I okay to see a 20% drop in the X and still sleep well in that day? So you have to try and see what value erosion, temporary value erosion, are you accepting? If you are not ready to see even a 5% loss in the interim, then you really have to see whether you have any risk appetite at all. So like how I see it is, I would say I will look at my COVID portfolio and increase my risk appetite. During COVID, my portfolio fell by about 17% interim. On 23rd March, I was down 17% from the peak I saw on 31st December. Then I still didn't panic. I slept well on 23rd March 2020 when the lockdown was announced. Then I know my risk appetite is at least seeing a loss of 17% and not panicking and removing the money. If I removed the money, I would be a lot poorer than I am today, 5 years from then. So, how do you analyze the risk appetite? Visualize. How would you react when you see temporary paper losses? If you're able to withstand 20% loss momentarily and not be too panicky about it and not fidget with your investments, then you're meant for equity. Otherwise, you still need to be trained for equity.
All right, I think we have lots to talk on, but then my time is up for this particular discussion. Thank you so much for taking time out. And you know what's important is getting the basics right. And I mean, the best mentor to have is a voice like you. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita.